Hey YouTube, Rob the Movie Collector here, bringing you another brand new video. Today I'm doing a top 10 films of 2013 that I liked. Sort of my 10 great films of 2013 maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure what to call this video yet. I don't necessarily call it the best films because I haven't sort of seen all the films of 2013. So these are just sort of 10 films that I really liked, probably the sort of 10 of the best films that I'd seen, I guess, 2013. Let's put it that way. Yeah, so we'll get into it. Yeah, let's start. So number 10 is Oblivion. Just a really good movie, I thought. This is great sort of science fiction elements to it. Great sort of science fiction premise, and I thought Tom Cruise was pretty good, and all the sort of supporting actors, and just a great sort of I don't know, it's just sort of watch, I guess, and just as sort of, I don't know, immerse yourself, maybe, if that's the right word, into this sort of, science fiction environment. So that's, it's a good film, I thought. Number 9 was Elysium, I think that's how you pronounce it, with Matt Damon. Another good sort of science fiction type movie. I think perhaps the storyline perhaps could have been perhaps a little bit better, I guess, in some ways, but it was still a very well enjoyable watch, I thought. It did sort of remind me a lot of, there's an animated film from the 90s, which is when all the good anime was made, in my opinion. Pretty sure it's called Battle Angel Alita. Pretty sure that's the one I'm thinking of. Very sort of similar sort of premise to it. You sort of have the sort of, I guess, some way, sort of two planets, I suppose, and the planet up the top's where all the rich people live, and they sort of throw all their rubbish and stuff down to the planet below, which is where all the poor people live, and the people that sort of can't afford to sort of buy their way up to the better, cleaner planet above type of thing. But that was definitely a good sort of film, made by the same people that did District 9. So it was a good film. Number 8 is actually a horror film, horror remake, which I thought was really good, and a lot of people do shit on it, reckon it was pretty awful, but I thought it was actually probably one of the better or best remakes or horror remakes of recent years, I thought. That's Evil Dead. I thought this is actually really good, I thought. I just sort of liked the storyline to it and the characters, and had a great sort of gore to it as well, and it had a very nice sort of art style, and I just thought it was a really sort of fun watch, I thought. I don't quite understand the hate for it, I suppose, because it's a remake. Some people just don't like remakes, and they just go out of their way to trash it. But I definitely thought it was pretty good. So I definitely recommend checking that one out if you get a chance. So that was number 8. Number 7, another sort of horror style one with zombies. That would have been World War Z with Brad Pitt. I thought it was a really good sort of storyline to that one. Good sort of premise, and pretty much sort of some ways non-stop action, I suppose, pretty much through the entire film. I think perhaps towards the end perhaps it loses a bit of momentum, I think, towards the end. But definitely just a really sort of fun watch, and just a good storyline, I thought, that one, actually. So that's number 7. Number 6 is actually a film that a lot of people don't seem to talk about on their top 10, which I'm sort of quite surprised about. I have sort of watched a few other people's top 10, and they haven't sort of mentioned it, which I don't know, quite surprised at. I guess I'm sure some people out there definitely would have it on their list. But that was Rush, which I thought was really good. I think in some ways perhaps people didn't necessarily watch it because they don't sort of like F1 racing, which I'm not a fan of either. But I still did quite enjoy the movie, though. I did sort of watch the there's an Art and Senna documentary which was released a few years ago, which I thought was actually really fantastic, and I definitely recommend people watch that. Probably one of the best documentaries that I've ever seen, that one, actually, I think. The Art and Senna documentary. I think it's just called Senna. But Rush I thought was just a really great movie. I mean, it wasn't all just, sort of car racing. It was actually more about sort of the story of these sort of two rival races, and just sort of how they were basically competing for the same thing, but they were actually sort of, in some ways, very different, even opposites, I guess, in sort of their personality. Chris Hemsworth was very much sort of loved to sort of drink and take drugs and girls and have fun, basically, whereas the other guy, Nicky Lauda, he was very much sort of a more of a sort of a calculating person, very had a lot of sort of concentration on what he was doing, and that's pretty much all he had sort of time for, just to sort of work on being a better race car driver. And it's definitely sort of polar opposites, I guess, in terms of character, but they were competing for the same thing, and just sort of, I guess in some ways about their rivalry, I suppose, between the two men. But definitely a great film, and definitely I'm surprised that it's not on a lot of other people's top 10. So that's Rush, number 6. Number 5 is actually a film that a lot of people were raving on about and reckon it was one of the best films of the year, and so I had to sort of check it out. That's Mud, with Matthew McConaughey and a few other people, which I can't remember their names offhand. Definitely a film that sort of a lot of people were sort of raving on about, and definitely sort of hyped up, and so I did sort of watch it, and I don't think it necessarily sort of blew me away as much as perhaps I was expecting, as people had sort of hyped it up to be. But it still was a very good movie, I thought. It's kind of one of those films I sort of watched and sort of finished watching it and thought, yeah, that wasn't too bad. But then I sort of, over the next few days, I sort of started thinking about the film a bit more, and I actually did sort of think, well, yeah, that actually was a pretty good movie. Some people sort of, likened it to sort of Stand By Me and stuff, which I can sort of see. I thought that, very good performances by all the actors. Not just Matthew McConaughey, but also the two young boys. I thought they were really good sort of young actors, and did a really good performance, I think, in their roles. Good sort of story to it, and perhaps might have been just a little bit too long. I think it does kind of drag a little bit here and there, but definitely a really good film, I thought, though. Number 4 is a very sort of epic blockbuster. I did actually quite enjoy the first part of it. That was The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug, however you say it. And people were sort of saying that this new one's a lot better than the first one, which I guess I can agree with. I'm not quite sure, really. I don't think the newer one was actually had a lot more action to it, and it was more of a sort of a fun watch, I guess. But I did sort of have a few problems with it, I suppose, in some ways. I did sort of find perhaps a little bit too long, which I think some people have sort of commented on. And I mean, it had a lot more action to it, but I just thought some of that action was just a little bit sort of over the top, and as other people sort of said, a bit too sort of cartoony, a bit sort of unrealistic. I mean, obviously the Hobbit movies aren't, and the Lord of the Rings movies or whatever, they're not necessarily supposed to be, very realistic, I suppose, because it's more of a sort of fantasy story. But I just sort of felt the Desolation of Smaug was a little bit too much over the top in terms of action, and the action scenes are a bit too unrealistic, I think, for me. It did have a lot more action to it, but it also had, I think, a lot more sort of storyline to it as well. And I think that it kind of got a bit bogged down, I think, the story, and a bit sort of, I don't know if I have to use the word melodramatic, but it sort of did. Yeah, I don't know. It's obviously my top 4 spots. I did actually quite enjoy the film. I just thought in some ways it was perhaps just a little bit sort of over the top, and did perhaps get a little bit bogged down, perhaps just with the storyline a little bit. But definitely a good film, though. So that's number 4. Number 3 is a film that went to the cinema and just absolutely loved. That's Pacific Rim. I think I did actually sort of watch it twice actually in the cinema. I'm a big sort of fan of sort of giant robots, and I definitely do like them. So I did actually quite enjoy this film. I thought it was a really great film. It's one of those films, another film I'm going to mention in a minute actually, where people just talk about, it's all visuals, there's no actual storyline to it and sort of stuff. But I thought this was actually a film that did actually have a bit of it did sort of have a decent storyline to it. Wasn't just sort of all, action and cheese, sort of thing. I did actually quite enjoy the premise to it, and characters, and I mean, the film did sort of remind me of a lot of other films. I think probably at least 50 films I think I counted. Like when I sort of watched it the second time, I did sort of count how many films it reminded me of, and I'm pretty sure I got up to 50 different sort of films that it did sort of remind me of. But I mean, I did sort of just like sort of the fun sort of premise to it, and The action scenes I thought were really good, and I didn't necessarily sort of care for perhaps the two scientists. I thought that their storyline could have been removed from the movie, but I did sort of quite like the I can't remember her name, but the Asian actress, her sort of storyline I thought was actually pretty good. Definitely, at least for me, it definitely has a bit of a World War II sort of vibe to it. The sort of the Japanese sort of losing World War II. I'm not sure if other people can sort of say that, but I sort of can. With all sort of the destruction and of the the bomb, the Hiroshima bomb. I definitely think there's a bit of a sort of a vibe of that going on. I think in there somewhere. So that's number 3, Pacific Rim. Number 2 is actually a film that went to the cinema and watched and just thought was absolutely fantastic. Probably one of the best sort of cinema experiences I've ever had, I think, for quite a long time. And pretty much just loved the film from sort of, start to finish. It was just sort of all action and a big sort of epic blockbuster. That's Star Trek Into Darkness, which I just thought was an absolutely amazing film, especially to watch in cinema. I thought it was just really good. Just sort of loved the storyline to it and the characters and the action, and just absolutely loved it. I mean, it wasn't like a sort of a drama film. It wasn't an artsy proper film, I suppose. It was more of a sort of an action blockbuster. But I still did quite have, in terms of actually me, actually enjoying the film, the experience of watching it. I thought that was definitely in my my number 2 spot. I think definitely. I should actually own. I should got the steelbook for that. Well, I actually got sort of both steelbook editions because I couldn't sort of choose between the two, and they're both reasonably cheap. So they're definitely great releases. I'm just not dropping them and breaking them. So that's Star Trek. That's number 2. Okay, on number 1, drum roll. I can't hear that, but anyway. Film that I think other people probably would have in their number 1 spot. Another film I was sort of mentioned before about sort of all visuals. It's all 3D and visuals, and some people might say no storyline to it, which is something that I sort of disagree with. That's Gravity, with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. Definitely, visuals are absolutely fantastic. I thought, I only watched it in 2D, but I still thought the visuals are absolutely fantastic. And I have sort of heard it's one of the sort of best 3D movies to watch. I think just in terms of storyline though, people sort of say there's not much storyline to it, and which I suppose on the surface, I suppose there isn't much storyline to it. But for me, I think maybe I'm going on and maybe sort of seeing things that aren't there, but I definitely think there's a hell of a lot going on storyline wise that is actually sort of on the surface of that movie. I think in some ways the films, for me anyway, definitely the whole film is definitely a metaphor for something. And I mean, you've got to obviously there's a lot of elements to it which we had other people have sort of sort of talked about, sort of the images of sort of rebirth, and because you've got the scene where Sandra Bullock's sort of all curled up into like the fetus position, and there's definitely a bit of a sort of an image there of sort of being rebirthed again and stuff like that, and that sort of image does remind me also perhaps the Alien 3 as well. That's sort of the curled up sort of image which you do sort of get on the cover. I think it's on the cover of the Alien 3 movie poster. But anyway, a lot of other sort of symbolism elements to it as well. I'm not going to be a bit vague here, but I think this we sort of learned that Sandra Bullock has had a rather sort of traumatic event happen to her, which I think is a very key aspect of the movie. I think the movie's some ways, I don't want to say the whole thing was a dream, because it's sort of a very cliched, cheesy thing to say. But I think in some ways it very much could have been, but not necessarily a dream, maybe. Yeah, because this, this tragic event, which I'm not going to mention, would sort of mess someone up pretty bad. And I think in some ways the film itself, in some ways, is her way of perhaps coping with that tragedy, and in some ways, I don't know, some ways perhaps sort of punishing herself. She's sort of going through all this sort of horrible things happening to her, sort of, and in some ways, is that some ways self-inflicted on her because she you know, because of this traumatic event that happened to her, and she feels responsible for this event, and I'm probably not making much sense here, I suppose, but I definitely think there's a bit more going on with the Sandra Bullock character, and sometimes I don't think there's actually the film's actually set in space. I think that's just a metaphor or vehicle to sort of show what this film's about. But I mean, maybe I'm just seeing something that's not there, or just sort of, I don't know. But I definitely think, for me anyway, I've got to watch it again. I definitely think there's a hell of a lot going on that isn't on the surface of that film. But definitely a really good film, and definitely have to be the part of the film that I definitely thought was at least the one that made me think the most, I think, or out of all the films that I sort of watched this year. Definitely the one that sort of left the most mark on me, I think, in terms of storyline and what was sort of happening. Anyway, so that's my top 10. I know a lot of people probably aren't going to agree with me. I mean, certainly if you see any of these movies, certainly leave me a comment below and tell me your thoughts, and maybe even tell me your top 10 if you want to, or whatever. I mean, I did sort of say this is not necessarily the top 10 of 2013, because I haven't sort of seen every film, but this is just more of a sort of a 10 films that I did actually really like, that sort of were or released or made or whatever, however you want to say it, in 2013. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure I'll be back very soon with another video for you. But for now, thanks for watching, and bye.